Welcome to Creepy Life Podcast, the podcast for everything creepy. I'm Thomas.
I'm Sparky. So, before we start today, do you want to talk about our listenership?
Yes, we finally got some data about where our listeners are from, and we actually have an international listener from Australia.
Yeah, that's kind of incredible because none of us know anybody in Australia. So whoever you are,
Thank you.
Yes. If you want to interact with us, we have the Facebook page and a Facebook group. We have Instagram. I think that's it right now. Oh, we have an email. Yeah. creepylifepodcast@gmail.com. And we'd love to know who you are.
I'm working on setting up a Twitter. But yeah, I never really expected that this podcast would really go beyond our friends, really. Maybe a couple mutual friends would start listening, but yeah, I don't know anyone in Australia, and I don't think I know anyone that knows anyone in Australia. So, that's awesome!
It is awesome. Yeah, and most of our listeners are from my hometown, so thank you to my friends that are listening. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. We are appreciative of every single listener we get. Yes. Even if you don't actually finish the episode and think we're horrible.
We try.
We
to
try.
Be horrible.
Yeah, it's our thing.
Alright. Tell me your thing. What are we doing today?
Well, today we're going to learn about the Nahanni Valley, also known as the Valley of the Headless Men.
That sounds interesting. Is this because you've been watching Sleepy Hollow lately?
No, this is actually... I've known about this for a while, and I wanted to do some research on it, and I thought, hey, this is a great topic. Let's do it.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
So, the Nahanni National Park is part of the Mackenzie Mountain region located in the Decho region of Northwest Territories in Canada.
Canada.
Yeah, it's in Canada. The name Nahanni is from the language of the Dene people that inhabited the region for over a millennium.
How do you spell that?
Dene, D-E-N-E.
Okay. Sorry. I see words in my head, and so when I don't know how to spell something, I get confused. You do that?
I do that. Nahanni means people over there, and it is actually a reference to a mountain-dwelling people known as the Naha, who used to raid the lowland settlements before they just vanished. And there's a lot of local talk about them and their legends and whatnot, and we'll get into a little bit more later. But this region is roughly 11,000 square miles, and is designated as a World Heritage Site. It's absolutely gorgeous. You can look it up. There's all kinds of beautiful photos. It is breathtaking. It's surrounded by peaks. It's got geysers, sinkholes, canyons, caves, gorges, forests. It even has Virginia Falls, which is a giant waterfall that crashes down 315 feet, or 96 meters. It is Canada, after all, 96 meters. Which is twice as high as Niagara Falls.
I just googled a picture of it, and it is very pretty. And Niagara Falls is ridiculously tall, though, so that's...
Yeah, I've never seen it, but I really want to.
I went there when I was, I think, 8 or 9, 10 maybe, and we went on the Canada side. I don't know, I think it's funny to call it Canada. I don't know why. But
are you sure you're not Canadian?
I know where you sleep. I'll murder you. Nobody heard that. Anyway, but we went there and it was amazing, but it smelled like fish. And
you sure? Yeah. Okay.
No, don't even.
No, I was gonna ask. It's like on a river, right?
Yeah. And we
Fishing,
did.
Fish live in water.
My parents and I did like a boat tour thing where we could go up like on the lake. Anyway, this isn't about Niagara Falls.
Did you have to wear the goofy coats? Yeah.
I think my parents still have them somewhere.
That is awesome, actually.
But
I mean, hey, you actually saw Niagara Falls up close. Mm-hmm. So to have that in perspective, when we say that this one is twice as high as Niagara Falls, that's crazy.
Also, there was an FBI's Most Wanted wax museum near where we were, and I had nightmares about it for a long time. I don't know how, as a child, I was afraid of everything, and then I grew up and I'm like, let's do a podcast about scary things that make me not sleep.
Okay, well, back to the story. The South Nahanni River's course, it has waterfalls. It goes through deep gorges. It's got natural hot springs. And it's got an area of boiling whirlpools that they call Hell's Gate.
Mm.
Yeah, and then that's what it encounters before it goes over the Virginia Falls, which is pretty cool. It's a rare example of what they call an antecedent river. So it's been powerful enough to keep the same course since it was formed, pretty much. Which is cool because, as we know, rivers, they change a lot.
They do?
Yeah.
I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
But yeah, so along the river's path, there's hot springs that has warm air and it never freezes. And it's got, like, tropical plants and whatnot around it, which is pretty cool up in Canada, northern Canada. The Nahanni National Park has managed to be pretty much untouched, and a lot of it hasn't been explored because it's so barren up there that there's not a lot of accommodations, not a lot of roads.
I have to ask, is it not been explored by anyone? Or is that just saying, like, non-indigenous people?
People have gone up there, as we'll hear some stories about them later, but it's a really remote park, and the only way in is by boat or plane.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah.
So it's like Alaska.
It's pretty much Canadian, or Canada's Alaska. The Canadian Alaska is what I was getting at. But the Nahanni Valley has been steeped in folklore for, well, the article said 9,000 to 10,000 years. A lot of tribes were afraid to settle because they believed that the different places were evil, and that they were haunted by various spirits, specters, and devils. Those who did come, like the Dene people, told of mysterious creatures lurking in the vast forests, and they experienced the violent Naha tribe of the mountains. The tribe was said to consist of fierce warriors who would wear masks and armor that had frightening imagery and were known to brutally decapitate their victims.
Sweet.
Yeah.
So we should go party with them, is what you're telling me.
Except that they vanished.
Oh. Well.
The warriors of the Naha tribe were said to be larger than normal and wield strange and powerful weapons that no one had ever seen before. And they went on to become a mystery, as the tribe is said to have just disappeared from the face of the earth.
I'm really curious what these weapons are that no one has seen before, because I feel like, we're pretty uncreative with weapons. Like, you have swords, knives, guns. Wow, so cool. I wonder what kind of interesting things they made.
Well, it's possible that just for the region they had weapons, because the people saying that they had weapons they had never seen before was the indigenous tribe, the Dene. So, they might not have had, at the time that they were saying this originally, not seen a whole lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's been present-day similarities between the Naha and the Navajo languages, which has led speculation that the Navajo are actually descendants, that they might have migrated south.
Interesting.
When European fur traders first entered the valley during the 18th century, they were impressed by both the legends that they would hear from the natives, as well as the overall beauty. Because I admit it, when you're seeing it for the first time, in a time when there wasn't really photographs or whatnot, it really would catch you by surprise if you see something like that. Especially if you've, been going through areas with lots of snow and ice and everything, and all of a sudden you're in like an oasis.
Yeah, that would be pretty awesome.
As more European settlers found their way into the valley, it was seen as a potential path to riches, because a lot of people believed that there was a large quantity of gold that was untapped in this valley. And that, of course, just like the California gold rush, saw an influx of miners.
Of course.
Yeah, because, who doesn't want money, right?
That's the only thing that matters.
Although, the Nahanni Valley produced very little actual gold.
Interesting.
But there were legends that quickly formed that they had large stones of lost gold waiting to be found. Some stories told of miners spotting large nuggets of gold as big as grapes, and veins of untapped gold were said to be hidden away almost everywhere.
They didn't get a lot of gold from it.
They really didn't. And it was actually during this time that the more macabre legends began.
My fave.
Yeah, particularly in a part of the park known as the 200-Mile Gorge. You ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So in 1908, Willie and Frank McLeod came prospecting in the valley just as people were doing, looking for money, right?
Mm-hmm.
They packed up their gear, they went out into the wilderness, and they didn't return.
Uh-oh.
Mm-hmm. After about a year, A lot of people presumed that either they succumbed to elements, because there was like sinkholes and bad weather and wild animals and whatnot. And there were some rumors that saying that they found gold that just left at a different way, and that's why no one that had seen them go in saw them come out. Which, I mean, it's possible. But then as soon as they had vanished, about a year later, the 2 men were found. One report I found said that they were found on the bank of a river. Another report said that they were bound to a tree on the side of the river. Both of them were decapitated, and their heads were never found.
Oh, maybe that's why it's called the Valley of the Headless Men.
And they were actually, their bodies were discovered by their brother, Charlie.
Oh. It's bad enough that it's like a headless body, but for like one of your relatives to discover you, like somebody that loves you, that's gotta be awful.
But yeah, so they buried the bodies because he was actually part of a search party. So there was about 7 people that witnessed the burial. So it was, there was multiple people saying, yes, we did find the bodies and we buried it. Now, before they vanished, a few of the local trappers and hunters claimed that they saw a third man with the McLeods because their brother Charlie wasn't part of their expedition up there. But he knew it was happening. They speculated that there was a third man, and that person, they don't know if he was the one that decapitated them. They don't know what happened to him, but there was some rumors that he was seen in some of the Hudson Bay trading posts later on.
Interesting. It's a mystery.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this is only the first story, or the first of many bizarre disappearances or deaths.
Dun, dun, dun.
So, in 1917, a Swiss prospector by the name of Martin Jorgensen made his way to the Nahanni Valley to try finding gold, of course. And at first, he seemed to be doing really well. He built a cabin, he had a mining operation, and he was well known by other settlers in the area, right? He even sent out letters claiming that he had struck gold.
So here, let's bring more people here to get the gold that really isn't actually being dug up or whatever.
Well, shortly after he sent those letters out, his cabin was found burned to the ground. His body was found in the house among the ashes without a head.
Oh.
And they never found any trace of his head.
Someone's got a nice head collection going.
Someone's got a nice collection. A few years later, in 1945, a miner from Ontario was found in a sleeping bag without a head. Around the same time, a trapper named John O'Brien was found...
It's Trapper John?
Trapper John. Trapper named John O'Brien was found frozen to death in the nearby wilderness with his hands clutching onto a pack of matches next to a campfire. So there was evidence that there was a fire, and those that found the body seemed like he was flash frozen. Like he's sitting there with a fire, he's still got the matches in his hands, and just completely frozen. Gone. And as far as I could find, he actually did have his head when they found him.
I was just going to ask if he had his head.
In 1962, a pilot of a light aircraft survived a crash in this wilderness. He built a camp a short distance from where he wrecked. He was equipped enough that he was able to have food, fuel, shelter, and provisions from the aircraft's cargo that he was confident he was going to be able to survive for a while.
Did they have some kind of a journal or something from him?
Yes, he was keeping a diary at the time. Okay. So
I was wondering if... Because just guessing from how these other stories have gone, my guess is he's going to end up dead, so I was wondering, how did they know all this, that he was feeling confident or whatever? Okay.
So he waited and he wrote about his experiences in his diary. Mm-hmm. And many times he wrote about seeing aircraft actually flying over looking. Because they knew his plane went down. No, it was planes.
Aliens.
Not everything is aliens.
Everything is aliens.
What was really messed up, though, where he crashed was only 6 miles away from his destination.
Oh, that's a bummer.
That is a bummer. And he was probably unaware of where he was. So he sat there for about 50 days waiting for a rescue and then disappeared. Okay, 6 months after the last entry, his plane was discovered and they followed to his camp. No further trace of him has ever been found.
It's really interesting that it took them 6 months to find even the plane.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder, was it like covered by trees or something, or?
Well, it's all wilderness,
the
forests
true.
and whatnot.
But you'd think that like a plane would, like a wing or a tail or something would be sticking out. You'd think that you would notice that, or that. I mean, what year was this?
62.
Okay, I don't know much about 1960s airplanes, but I'm thinking maybe there'd be something shiny or something on it that they would like see that. So that's crazy that it took that long to find it.
But one thing that I definitely think is crazy about this. He manages to survive and write in his diary for 50 days. Then stops. No trace of his body. Nothing. I couldn't find any evidence of anyone seeing him run off into the woods or a trail that he had made. It's just like he just vanished off the face of the planet.
Because aliens.
Maybe he was abducted. We don't know. Maybe they'll bring him back when they bring back Elvis.
So he was 6 miles away from his destination, and he stayed there for 50 days.
Mm-hmm.
That's really a bummer, man.
That is really a bummer, but it makes sense. I mean, they didn't have the best instruments. He probably was a little disoriented from the crash and whatnot, had no idea where he actually was.
Yeah, that's very true. It's just like one of those things where it's a sad coincidence.
That is true. Now, in addition to the mysterious beheadings, a lot of people, like the pilot, they vanished without a trace. Just, hey, I'm going hiking, never seen again. That number went to 44 people by 1969. 44 people had just vanished.
That's crazy.
Now, there have been a lot of reported, mysterious lights and UFOs have been seen. It's also been a hotspot for Bigfoot activity.
Oh, see, that's your jam.
And now, here's where it really starts getting crazy. Because, Bigfoot, yeah, it's a wilderness. They could easily survive. There's food. Now, there have been some reports of a bear-like carnivore called the bear dog, or Amphicenidae. It was thought to have gone extinct during the Pleistocene epoch. My scientific names aren't great. But in addition to the strangeness, there was an ice cave called the Grotte Valerie, where ancient skeletons of over 100 sheep were found, apparently having starved to death around 2500 BC.
Poor sheepies.
The cave now has the nickname the Gallery of Lost Sheep. Now, okay, so to this day, it's all a mystery. We still don't know what caused this. There's a lot of theories. Everything that goes from, okay, yeah, that's a good theory, to, yeah, that's crazy. Some say that the valley is cursed, just as the natives had always believed.
I think that's a fair assessment.
Others think that the deaths were the result of ghosts of Naha warriors risen from the dead to keep the white men away, and they still had their penchant for beheadings.
I don't really blame them. In history, white men are the cause of quite a bit of troubles,
No, and in
especially
all honesty,
for the natives.
I mean, there's lots of caves, gorges. I honestly wouldn't be shocked if we found out. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of scientists that will probably completely argue with this, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was some remnant of a native tribe living in this really barren, remote wilderness that's still, untouched. Mm-hmm. Someone wanders into their land, well, sorry, they're going to defend.
Yeah, and I wouldn't blame them. That's their
it's a real
area.
Last of the Dogmen type situation.
Or the Dog Bears.
Last of the Dogmen's a movie about finding a tribe in the mountains that's completely untouched. Other theories believe that there might be a secret entrance to the hollow earth.
Okay, I was going to say, are these flat earthers saying this, but obviously not, because the earth is just, paper thin.
Oh, yeah.
And you fall off the edge. But interesting.
Some also believe that there might be a thin spot that separates the different dimensions.
Is it like, what do they call it, the veil?
The veil, yeah. And some more realistic theories have pointed out that it might be native tribes or rivalries between miners that led to the deaths. Which, I mean, if there was a third person with the McLeod brothers and they struck gold, greed can really affect you. Now, here is a possible explanation. Due to the time that this happened, he probably wasn't responsible for the McLeod deaths, because he would have been like a small child at the time they were found.
There were child serial killers.
Yeah, but I mean, he was like 4 at this time.
Well, you don't know.
It could be an explanation for maybe some disappearances later on. About 40 miles from Nahanni, there was a loner named Albert Johnson. He lived in a crude cabin. Albert Johnson was actually a pseudonym, and his true identity to this day is unknown.
It's Albert Fish.
He was up there searching for the McLeod's lost mine.
Looking for gold.
And now he has become known as the Mad Trapper of Rat River. So in 1931, one of the native trappers complained to the local RCMP detachment.
What is that?
Aklavik, Royal Canadian Mounted Police.
I never remember that.
They reported that someone had been tampering with his traps, tripping them, hanging them in trees, and he identified that Johnson was probably the culprit. On December 26th, Constable Alfred King and Special Constable Joe Bernard, each of whom were experienced in that area, they trekked the 60 miles to Johnson's cabin to ask him about the allegations, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that might not have been a great idea. They saw smoke coming from the chimney, and so they approached to talk.
The chimney?
Chimney. Shut up. Stop being mean to me.
No.
They approached the hut to talk, but he refused, and he acted as if he didn't even notice anyone was out there. They could hear him inside, but...
Maybe he's deaf.
No, he wasn't deaf. He was just crazy.
Cool.
King looked in the cabin window, at which point he placed a sack over it, so he knew they were out there. He was just keeping them from looking in. They eventually decided that they were going to return and get a search warrant and come back.
Prediction. By the time they come back, the whole thing is burned to the ground.
No. They returned 5 days later with 2 other men. He again refused to speak, and so King decided that he was going to enforce the warrant and force open the door.
And then they put sticky bombs on it and blew it up. And then they drove a car away and ran into a bunch of pedestrians.
You've been playing GTA too much. As soon as he began, Johnson shot him through the wooden door. A brief firefight broke out, and the team managed to return the wounded King to Aklavik, where he would eventually recover. Johnson escaped, I guess. He was finally cornered up at Eagle River in the northern Yukon Territory, and it became a media circus. You know, he was eluding the Mounties, and a team was sent to take him into custody. There was a 150-mile foot chase lasting more than a month, and a shootout in which Johnson was fatally wounded on the Eagle River in the Yukon. Why I say this might be a possibility for some of them disappearing, other than the fact that he was clearly mad and not afraid to kill. In his possession were found some gold teeth that some people said that they were his own. Other people said that they were probably pulled from the mouths of prospectors that had been found dead since he had been up there.
So he didn't want to deal with the bodies, he just took the heads to take their gold teeth.
I guess that's a theory. I mean, we still don't know exactly how many people really have disappeared. So some people could have gone up and he could have been killing them because he viewed them as a threat. That is a theory that the Mounties have on their file, that he was responsible for some of the disappearances.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest.
So, like with the McLeod brothers, it wouldn't have been that far-fetched that someone else looking for gold goes up there, goes a little crazy being all alone, sees other people coming in, views them as a threat, kills them.
Yeah, and I think, you know, isolation can cause mental instability at times, which is why I worry for my friends right now that are not living with family or friends or whatever.
So that pretty much wraps up the basic story of the Valley of the Headless Men. But I did find some other legends. There's the evil spirit, Nahanni, and the Mongol caves and the White Queen. Over the years, numerous hunters have wandered into the valley in search of game. Very few have returned. While their compatriots crouch around a campfire, those that did come back told of encounters of an evil spirit who haunted the valley, whose unearthly shrieks echoed throughout the canyons on the windy nights. Others described a race of fearsome hairy giants who dwelled in caves carved along the canyon walls. Led by a beautiful, pale-skinned chiefess, these primitive mountain men killed and ate anyone who trespassed in their territory.
All right.
Then, of course, there's the legend of the Naha tribe, the ones that would decapitate and then vanished. The curse, of course, of Nahanni Valley, all the people just disappearing without a trace. Then I thought this one was interesting. The Nukluk, around the same time of this other creature that was called the Wahila, which I will talk about in just a minute, there were sightings of short, hairy, half-naked subhumans. They were clad in moose skin loincloth and carrying stone clubs, sporting a long, dark beard. The creature was called the Nukluk by the local Dene.
Cool.
It evoked the old fairy tale, or old tales of hairy, cave-dwelling cannibals.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's just creepy, right?
Reminds me of the little blue guys in Skyrim in Solstheim.
Oh, yeah.
I don't remember what they're called.
I know which ones you're talking about
They
now.
throw spears at you and they're really annoying.
According to witnesses in the Nahanni Valley, an enormous, solitary, wolf-like creature, eerily reminiscent of the monster Inuit myth, dubbed the Wahila. It's believed to be a relic of an ancient carnivorous bone-crushing mammal referred to as a bear dog, like we talked about earlier. It's supposed to have gone extinct about 8 million years ago. Others maintain that the Wahila's physical description corresponds more to that of the dire wolf, a prehistoric relative to the modern-day timber wolf. Now, that's all I could find, but I'm sure that there's a lot more if you dig way deeper than I really had time to do.
Deeper than Wikipedia?
Actually, none of my stuff came from Wikipedia. I mean, usually I start with Wikipedia, get an overall, kind of an overview of things. Mm-hmm. But all that Wikipedia wanted to talk about was the national park. It didn't really get into any of the legends or stories. So yeah, that is what I could dig up of the Valley of Headless Men. There's not a crazy amount to it, but there is a lot of folklore, legends that if you guys want to... If this whetted your appetite a little bit and you want to dig deeper, go for it. There's a lot of interesting stuff, especially when you get to Native American folklore. There's all kinds of interesting tales.
Yeah, and it is really beautiful. When we post the episode on our page and in the group, we'll post a picture or two of the valley, because I googled it while Thomas was telling a story. It's really very gorgeous. If you are into like mountain scenery or whatever, you'll love it.
It's something I would like to see, but I'm too lazy to actually go. Mostly because I won't fly and I'm not a big fan of boats.
And you hate Canada.
I do not hate Canadians. I just tease you for mispronouncing certain words,
You know what?
even though you're not
Just
Canadian.
because I'm from the northern United States in a certain area where people have trouble saying the word B-A-G, doesn't mean you have to make fun of me for it.
Sparky, I'm pretty sure they can spell.
I know, but see, every time I say it, even if I say it right, you make fun of me.
Honestly, if you were to spend some time where I'm from, there's a lot of pronunciations you can tear apart.
Well, yeah, because down there they all sound like this.
I have worked very hard on my accent, and no, they don't talk like the Beverly Hillbillies.
Some of them do.
Some of them do, yes.
What was it? Some of them do, yes.
Leave my accent out of it.
Anyway, thank you so much for listening. Sorry for the background noises. This beautiful kitty cat has decided that she needed to be in here. Normally we'll kick them out, but I didn't want to get up and lock her in another room because that was way too much work right now.
She's just been in a mood.
Anyway, so thank you again. If there's any topics you want to hear from us, please let us know. We've got, I think, about 100 each that we want to do, something like that.
Roughly, yeah.
But I keep finding more that are not on my list, and I'm like, ooh, I'm going to do that next. So we've got enough for quite a while, but if there's something you're, like, really itching to hear, please email us at creepylifepodcast@gmail.com. Or we have a Facebook group and a Facebook page and Instagram. Feel free to contact us any one of those ways. We'd love to get some feedback.
Yeah, and on the Facebook group, we are both admins. If you want to join on the group and you have a question you want to ask or submit something to us, we're both on there and we both read everything.
And I work from home right now. Yay. Give me something to look at that isn't my work, please. Please. Anyway, thank you so much for listening.
Yep, thanks for listening.
Stay creepy.